Welcome to the Fort Collins Fellows Podcast, from Colorado State University to New Belgium Brewery, and the hundreds of miles of hiking and biking trails. Fort Collins has earned its well-deserved reputation as one of the top places to live in the United States. Join the fellas as they uncover the stories, places, and people that make Fort Collins so extraordinary.
All right, everybody, we have your favorite topic to talk about. Once a year, you come around April 14th and you get to write a big old check, or maybe even a check written to you from the old government. And we've got somebody special with us, an absolutely hard worker, local to Northern Colorado, Mr. Zach Roth, who owns a CPA firm. Zach, I appreciate you joining us, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, and talk to the audience a little bit about who Zach Roth is and a little bit about how you got into accounting.
Yeah, my name is Zach Roth. I own Elevated Accounting and Tax LLC. We are in Windsor, Colorado, which is just a little offshoot by Fort Collins. Firm is about 4 years old, 4.5 years old at this point. I'm a Colorado native, born and raised here. I've taken the scenic tour. I've lived in most of the towns in Northern Colorado, lived in Southern Colorado. I've lived in Red Junction on the Western Slope, so I know the state pretty well. Got into accounting, like a lot of us. I kind of bought into the dream that our parents promised us, where you just go get a degree and then, you can do anything after that. Doesn't matter what your degree's in, just go get a degree. And I think for me, at least, I entered college just kind of buying into that, and then kind of understanding that I'd get a job afterwards. And I didn't know what that really would look like, didn't know what I thought I would be good at, was just kind of working like, bartending, waitering, that kind of thing, like just really trying to find my way in my late teens. And I took an entrepreneurship class with the right professor. This was at the University of Northern Colorado. And he kind of turned my mind on for, big things could be in your future if you work really hard and plan them, right? And at the same time, I was taking an accounting class. I realized that I enjoyed what I was doing. I looked around, other people were really, really struggling in an area that I didn't find particularly difficult. And so a lot of people in business want to play to their strengths, right? And so I took a few more classes, saying if that would be a good fit. It was something I knew I could do, I was interested in, and kind of the rest is history. So I have an undergrad from the University of Northern Colorado, which is in Greeley, and then I have a master's degree from Colorado State University, which is in Fort Collins.
Awesome. What do you think about the realignment going on right now? Do you think CSU is going to somehow find a way into a conference that matters?
Who knows? I mean, we've had some really fun times in your life and my life. The early 2000s with some of that stuff was a lot of fun. They've had some good teams and some good competition. It seems like they've been kind of flailing as of late, and who knows what they'll do. I think, if they were to enter a big conference, if they were to get into the Pac-12 or something like that, I don't know how well they would do, but it might put some more eyes on them. So to be determined.
Yeah, I mean, it's a growing community, obviously. Fort Collins, Windsor, Loveland, and the university has always been a backbone in Northern Colorado. My dad graduated from UNC, and with accounting, I don't know if you knew this, I graduated with accounting, and I kind of had the same mindset that it seems like you did, in the sense of like, accounting is a great base for any entrepreneurial journey. And it just happens to be your entrepreneurial journey was starting a CPA firm and, being able to leverage your degree and then also your ability to own and operate a business. Talk to me a little bit about, you do a lot of tax returns. So Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, majority of your business is tax returns. Is that going to be kind of like a personal and company tax returns?
Yeah. One thing I want to inject real quick is that my grandfather, after World War II, graduated from Colorado State University, and he lived in a frat house, which is now Taco Bell on the corner of Prospect and College.
That was a frat house. I had such a weird design that makes sense that was probably something before it was a Taco Bell.
Yeah. So before he passed away, my grandfather in his late 80s drove me around Fort Collins. And then he actually got his master's degree from UNC, which is kind of the opposite that I did. But drove me around Northern Colorado and showed me the old days. And Fort Collins just has such a cool, rich history, and he had some really neat stories about that. But anyway, yes, to the firm, most of what we do are tax returns. That's correct. We do bookkeeping. We have a kind of a small bookkeeping base. All the people we bookkeep for are tax clients as well. And it's kind of a courtesy that we do that for them. It's not our bread and butter, but it's kind of an ancillary service that we perform. Most of what we do is tax work.
Awesome. Yeah, and it probably is kind of nice for you to be to sometimes, to some extent, depending on who the operator of the business is, to do that bookkeeping so that when the time is to do the tax return. It's like, I know exactly everything is where it needs to be and it's booked correctly and nothing needs to be changed, no journal entries, no forcing of anything.
That's correct. Yeah. Having everything ready to go January 1st is a good benefit.
Yeah. So the amount of tax returns you guys do, what percentage would you say are W-2 versus self-employment?
Yeah. So W-2, meaning that there's zero self-employment activity or rentals, I would say that would make up maybe 30% of our practice. I would say 70% would be people that are self-employed, rental properties, real estate investment, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. And what type of individual would you say, like a small business owner is coming to you for their services? Like somebody who owns, like you said, rental properties, has a certain amount of employees, or is it a solopreneur? What generally is kind of that like threshold that I need to go have Zach do my books?
Yeah, so kind of all the above. We have plenty of solopreneurs that, maybe file something called a Schedule C, where they're either a sole proprietor, a single member LLC, something like that. So I have plenty of those folks, plenty of people that have, a rental property, 2 rental properties. And then we have people on up to pretty big businesses with, 50 to 100 employees, something like that. So anywhere in between.
Gotcha. And you get kind of a pretty decent insight, I would have to imagine, of opportunities within Northern Colorado, kind of seeing like, man, this industry is just crushing it. Like new construction's just killing it. Or, we're seeing a huge influx of digital nomads that are just doing really well for themselves. Is there any industry that, Fort Collins, Northern Colorado is really just, does a really good job as far as entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to speak your language here a little bit, but the real estate market is good here, right? It's a good market. There's a really strong local economy. So in my opinion, during some of the fluctuations over the last year, I think we've been hit maybe not nearly as hard as other areas that have been destinations, for the last few years. So you have places like, South Dakota, you have places like different areas in Montana, Idaho, Utah, even, that have been destinations over the last couple of years with, people moving from more, I guess, urban areas to more rural communities or smaller towns like we're in. So Fort Collins has a really strong local economy, and I think it's weathered that storm a lot better than some of the others because it's sort of independently sustaining, in my opinion, because there's so much going on. So to your point, real estate is good, and particularly I'm seeing the trades absolutely crush it right now. So electricians, plumbers, everybody is busy. Everybody's booked out. They're naming their own wages. They're naming their own rates. It's been very good. So the trades have done very well here. Even some handymen are crushing it, I've got some 6-figure, pickup truck and a sign on the side type of guys, right? So yeah, anybody that is willing to come in and put a real hard day's work in, there's enough work for them and there's opportunity. Oil and gas has been a little bit more tumultuous in the state for the last few years. Different legislative changes, that kind of thing, have made that a touch harder, but we still see a whole lot of 6-figure incomes in the oil and gas industry in Weld and Larimer County. There's always room for more of those people. There's a lot of production going on. Automotive has been pretty good too. We have a number of clients in the automotive industry that have done fine as far as repair shops and that sort of thing. We have quite a few. Go ahead.
You talked about this a little bit earlier before we kind of went live. I agree so fully with what you just said of if somebody is willing to come here and put in a full hard day's worth of work, they can be successful. Like whether it's trades or automotive or a professional service, like you were just saying, there's just not enough accountants out there. I don't know about lawyers. I don't know, I'm not sure. Same. Okay. Interesting. But, it's because of the growth of the area and the demand for services. I joke with some of my clients that, I talk to them about like, it's an FU quote. Like, I really don't want this job, but if you're willing to pay this number, I'll do it. But ultimately it's at a number that just makes zero sense. So to your point of naming your price and, there's stats out there of how many tradesmen are leaving the industry and how many are taking their place, and the growth of Northern Colorado, any part, Estes, Windsor, Timnath, Fort Collins, Greeley, Loveland. I mean, you just go up and down, and it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs too. And I was telling you this too. I was like, man, I think we do need to catch up for a year sooner than later, because I think it's been a couple of years. But last time we had chatted, I want to say it was just you and an assistant, and now it's you and 6 people. And like I mentioned earlier, like you crush it. You do a great job, and so obviously success will follow that. But I think not anybody can do that, because I definitely don't want to say that. But if you're willing to your point, put in a hard day's work, Northern Colorado is an absolute opportunity for any entrepreneur to come in and make a living and then some.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel a little bit like being a native here and kind of growing up here was sort of like buying Apple stock in 2004, right? It just, you can't go wrong that way. Tell me about your thoughts on that. Your business has grown exponentially since we met each other. You're hiring, you're bringing people on, you're expanding, your marketing has been spot on. So what do you feel like your opportunity is in Northern Colorado versus what might be elsewhere?
That's interesting. So I've been talking with my team specifically for the real estate market, right? So like I'm a real estate broker in town. There's 7 of us on our team. But what I've been telling them, and because transactions are like very much down right now, but we've been doing very well. And so the analogy that I've been telling them is the pie itself is going to be shrinking, but our piece of the pie will increase. And that's based off of, I think, what we're doing as far as in the market, adding value and really trying to take not just the easy way out of putting a sign in the yard and praying, but I think, to your point, it's like you're just trying to work hard and figure out the best way to do it and add value. But I think there's going to be organic shifts, right? Where people try to follow easy money. And maybe in 2020, 2021, it was, man, everybody and their mama is getting a real estate license because you can make a lot of money. And it's true. But now it's kind of changing and shifting, and homes are sitting on the market, and agents are actually having to work a little bit, and maybe having the side income might work, but probably not. So I think overall the Northern Colorado market will do very well. I put a graphic up the other day on like a live, and it was showing our active listings on an average monthly basis versus our population growth. And in 2007-8, like we had 1,500 homes a month on the market on average, and we only had 130,000 people in Fort Collins. Now we're having 250 homes on the month with 180,000 people. So like, I think overall the market will do fine. I think brokerages that are pivoting, I love a small boutique brokerage too, right? I think going and working for a behemoth of a company, it's going to take a long time to change however their marketing and strategies and things of that nature. So I'm excited about being that boutique and able to pivot. And I think that can be with anybody, like you said, plumbers and electricians going out and hanging a shingle and being able to come out and taking some sort of market share for yourself. And we're just hoping to do a small part of that on the brokerage side.
Very cool. Well, it's been really fun to watch. I'm rooting for you. I'm one of your biggest fans, and I'm glad that you're doing well.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. And you kind of talk a little bit about Northern Colorado. I think one of the things that people forget is part of Northern Colorado is this little place tucked away in Estes Park. And I did not know, but you've got some roots there and got a little bit of information on something that we haven't talked too much about. So tell me a little bit about Estes Park.
Yeah, Estes, it's so close. It's, a half hour from Loveland. It's 45, 50 minutes from Fort Collins. And it's a really, really neat town where you can take your family for a day. You can take them for a weekend. It's a really nice getaway, a total change of scenery from where we are on the Front Range here. I do have roots there. That's where my families are from, both mother and father's side. My father is actually from a little town called Allens Park, which is just past Estes Park towards Boulder. And he ran a dude ranch there where they, did trail rides with horses, and ran a lodge called Wild Basin, which is one of the prettiest places on earth back there, a very popular destination. It's my understanding that Rocky Mountain National Park, which is right at the base of Estes Park there, is the busiest national park in the nation. Sites that you can't see anywhere else. It's very accessible. There are walking and hiking trails for, kind of all ages and fitness levels. So it's a really neat place to be. Estes Park.
I've never been to Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh, really?
Kind of like sacrilege on this channel.
It is. So I'll get dorky on you for just a minute here, but elk in the fall, specifically like September and October, they come out and they mate, right? And so the male elk make a bugling sound, which is unlike anything you've ever heard before. It's super loud. It doesn't make sense when you see this giant animal with horns making these high-pitched type of squeals, but it's beautiful, it's majestic, and it's almost like the elk notes you put on a show for people, because where the road takes you from the entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park, it takes you through these big valleys. The road splits it right in half, and these elk will actually come down right near your cars, and they'll do kind of their mating rituals and make these noises, and it's unlike anything you've ever seen before. It's beautiful. It's awesome. So I would suggest anyone that maybe is looking for a cool little trip in the evening, September, October. That's a really fun way to spend time with your family.
I think now you got to schedule it, right? They have like open times and things of that nature that you got to do. It's not so much just like a drive up and go. So you got to kind of schedule it out a little bit.
Yeah, I think you need reservations from, I want to say 9 to 5. So before, after you can just enter.
Before, after you can just enter.
Yeah.
And is there any camping up there that people are able to do, or is it pretty like cut off for that?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a ton of camping in the park itself, but there are campgrounds throughout Estes Park. There's kind of a north and a south entrance, both through Estes, and there are campgrounds, RV parks, rustic hotels, cabins, just, kind of whatever you would want to find, you can find it there. Good way.
Would you recommend somebody who stays at the old Stanley Hotel, or is it too haunted?
We stay at the Stanley all the time, actually. It's
Do you really?
Kind of that's kind of a thing that our family does on the 4th of July every year. It's a really cool property. It's under new management and the service is great. The food is really good, actually. The rooms are well kept and, you get a little bit of that history. And I don't know if you're aware of what that history is, but the Stanley family were from back east and they had the kind of patriarch of the family had some serious health issues. And I believe he had tuberculosis. And they said, you either need to move somewhere with a really high altitude or you're probably going to die. And so they had the means to come to Estes Park, super high altitude. They were expecting him to live for about 6 months and he ended up living for like 30 years in Estes Park and built a hotel. He built a properties around there for all of his friends to come visit. And anyway, the legend has it that Estes Park has some healing qualities to it. So.
Oh, interesting. I kind of like that. My dad, I don't think he lived in Estes. I think maybe he did. I'm not sure, but he maybe friends or something along those lines. But he was saying one of the things that people don't think about Estes, like they would maybe get a lot of snow, but I don't think they get tons of snow, but maybe some wind is something that, as far as weather goes, probably the only thing as far something to take note of. Or do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, it can be windy, that's for sure. You can get some big gusts. You're not far from the Continental Divide. You're up there. You're at 8,000 plus feet, and so the weather can change quickly. During the summertime, you get a afternoon cool off with a little bit of a shower every once in a while, which is nice. But yes, during the wintertime especially, it can be kind of windy up there.
But the good thing is like you said, it's what's crazy to me is always the thing. It's like 30 minutes from Loveland. Like it is legitimately a mountain getaway, 30 minutes out your back door, which nowadays for me to get from North Fort Collins or Southeast Fort Collins all the way north of Terry Lake is 30 minutes.
Totally.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like my mind that plays tricks with me that I'm okay with 30 minutes doing that, but like going to Denver seems like a nightmare to me. I don't know what it is, but you've seen such growth here as well. And I know we talked about this a little bit in the sense of you're expecting the firm to grow a little bit more. Are you seeing a decent amount of like inflow of tax returns from people from out of state or is it mostly local that you do?
Yeah, a lot of it is out of state. People move here and then, they find me on the internet or something like that. Absolutely. So people from all over, obviously a lot of people from California. I've had several of those clients, even people from Texas. So yes, we are finding people from out of state and some of them are finding new work here. Some of them are able to work remotely and they just want to live somewhere nicer. And so, they'll keep their jobs that they had in other states. They'll work remotely here and, enjoy our way of life.
And financially, what does that mean for them? So somebody who, let's just say Austin, Texas. Texas has, I think, no state income, right? But say California, who's got 10% or more, they bring their Google job that they work for Google here, making great income. They can work remotely indefinitely, and they live in Windsor. What does a person's kind of tax return or tax implications look like that they maybe should take into consideration? Because these people are moving and they're doing so much research and so much analysis and putting pieces together to maybe make sure that they can limit as many variables as possible to make sure that this is in fact the right move. What does that look like for them on that side of things?
Yeah, for the most part, if they are going to work full-time remotely, they are now considered employees in the state where they reside. And so a lot of those people, they go from California paying California taxes, they move here and they're now considered Colorado employees. And so their employers will need to get the appropriate withholding accounts and then they'll start withholding for Colorado taxes instead of California. And so, usually there's a transitionary period for a year where they may file in California and file in Colorado. But oftentimes when people work solely remotely, they're domiciled in the state that they live in, and they're just paying Colorado tax instead of what could be a higher tax rate elsewhere.
You asked earlier how the brokerage is doing, and generally we're doing pretty well. In the sense of like we're 10% higher than last year, which is just nuts compared to considering what the market's doing right now. But one of the things that we do is we have a lot of local business, anywhere between Denver, to Wellington, and people moving to Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, Loveland, wherever. But we also have a lot of relocation business. People coming from. We got a call from Durango. We got a call from it was kind of, I think it's Sunnyvale, California, and kind of where the Silicon Valley is. And they're able to sell their house that they've got, down in Parker or something like that for, $1.5 million and move up to Fort Collins and get a nice house for $750,000 or their $3 million house in California. But I mean, it's like, you even then take that on, like, let's just use California, because that's just the kind of like it sticks out so bad as far as their state income tax of, what is it, like 11% now?
Yeah, it's high. It's a progressive scale, but yeah, it can get in the 12s. Yeah.
So 12% that they take that, and they're making, like, I think the median for, I think it was Google, the median income on Google is $300,000 a year. And so you take that $300,000 employee salary, W-2 income that lenders love, you sell your $3 million house and you come into Fort Collins and you're a freaking behemoth of a buyer, and your perspective is just so different from somebody who, like you and I, have been born and raised in Fort Collins, went to CSU, went to UNC, graduated. My starting income, and my initial income when I graduated in 2011 was $36,000 a year. And, I was stoked about that. And, there was some ability to increase that pay, but still, like, starting out right now, I think the person that I was talking with, they're expecting between 50 to 60 starting salary in Fort Collins. But the housing prices, rentals, all that kind of stuff, it's like you have to at minimum be a dual income if you have that type of salary. It's a 6-figure area. I think you legitimately need to have 6 figures in Northern Colorado to be comfortable between the two parents or partners or whoever. But yeah, it is a huge perspective in that, like 12% to 4.5% or whatever it is here in Colorado is significant dollars, especially when you're talking about $300,000 a year.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, there's still value here based on our quality of life and our strong local economy, like I touched on earlier. So yes, people are able to move, sell their houses, utilize some sort of capital gain exclusion to not pay taxes on all or any of their gain from selling their primary, and move out here and get a lot of value for the house, and then also maybe even pocket some of the cash, do some investing, that sort of thing as well. So it makes a lot of sense for those people, and I totally get that. You're right. We've had a big influx of people here. It's used to be a very, very affordable place to live, even in Fort Collins. In college, this was a long time ago, I lived off of Duke Lane, which is kind of over by Wilbur's, right? And we lived in this great big house. It was from the 70s. There were 3 of us. Our rent was $1,000, right? And, big old finished basements and huge backyard and that sort of stuff. And my buddy who I lived with at the time sent me the listing maybe a year and a half ago, and that house sold for like $650. Yeah, 8 something, and it really hadn't been updated. And it was just like, I know that these people paid $84,000 for this in like 1979, and yeah, so things have changed a lot. But perspective is important, and like you said, you can come from these other expensive areas, maintain your lifestyle. There's so much convenience and recreation around here. Maintain a really good lifestyle and also save some money. So
lifestyle, it's a good transition right there. And I would say I'm super interested because you've got a young family, as do I, and you're, from Northern Colorado, been all over Colorado. How are you? I would say one thing that I'm guilty of, I just told you I had not been to Rocky Mountain National Park. We are actively going and hiking, going to Rockies games. Like, we are like trying to just get more involved, because like these people come from, let's just say, Texas or parts of Iowa and Boston, and the lifestyle is the big driving factor of people moving here, and they just like live it up. And I'm like, holy cow, like you guys are doing things that I haven't done, and you guys are having so much fun. How are you able and willing and wanting to get out and enjoy the lifestyle that like so many people move here for?
Yeah, I think what's cool about the area is it's eclectic, and there's a little bit of something for everybody, right? So I'm not sure that we've talked about this, but my kids kind of became rednecks on their own, and
nice.
we have kind of fallen into like the rodeo lifestyle and horses and property and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's been cool because there's a giant horse community here, giant, of people wanting to help and places to ride and that kind of stuff. So we've kind of fallen into this area that I didn't even know existed until a couple of years ago when my kids became of age and became interested, right? But yeah, there's a little bit of something for everybody. I would say that I'm guilty of maybe not even doing some of the experiences like you were saying, right? We haven't been to Great Wolf Lodge in Colorado Springs. My kids haven't been to Cave of the Winds. We haven't done all of that, but we do a fair job of trying to get out and do different things. And being a homer, we oftentimes visit the same places because that's what I grew up doing or something like that. But we have been to Casa Bonita. So
since it reopened?
No. We the old Casa Bonita. So try it. Have you been to the new one? Or
I have not been to it, but I have, and I've been to Great Wolf Lodge, Garden of the Gods, all that kind of stuff. But it is crazy, like how many things that you can do. And to your point, it's like, man, I like going to now DC Oaks. Like that's not like, obviously it's only new for the last like 5-10 years or whatever that is, but it's still got its roots in Cooper Smiths. And so it's the new Cooper Smiths, CB and Potts. And, so to your point, like, man, we should get into these routines, but like we're trying to go camping more, which is interesting with young kids, but it's fun. And, it's an hour away. Like we're going camping Thursday and Friday night up to Red Feather. And I go up there, no cell service. I put up my camp, nobody around, completely private. And it's like, you're in a whole nother world. And it's an hour's drive, like truly an hour's drive from my door to, parking at the trailhead.
Yeah, I think geographically, we're in a really, really unique spot right here. We're tucked into the foothills. We're, just east of the foothills, and we're just east of the Great Rocky Mountains and the Continental Divide. And so, if you point your car east and drive, you're in the Great Plains and, small farming communities and some fun stuff to see out there. If you point west, you're in it. You're in the Rocky Mountains. You don't have to go far to have just beautiful mountain scenery, majestic lakes like red feathered trees, fresh air. You can get rid of light pollution pretty quickly when you get up into these small communities and you can see the stars like your kids have probably never seen before. So we're just like, we're set for success. And I always joke about this with my wife when we drive places. It's like, well, on the interstate, if we're road tripping or wherever, you'll stop and you're just in some armpit somewhere. And you're like, why did someone stop here? It's dirty, like it's hot. There's nothing here. Like, why did someone stop and go, yeah, I think we're going to live here the rest of our lives. But when you think of the people that came and found this area when they were migrating west and you see how beautiful it is, you have the Pooter, you have the Big Thompson, you have water sources, you have a mild climate, you can think, yeah, I probably would have stopped here too. It's gorgeous. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, every once in a while, I consider selling some investments and it's like, man, we could go retire, in some, BF nowhere, North Dakota and never have to worry about $1 again in our lives. But it's like, but man, it's a pretty phenomenal place. And we've had so many, the one thing that I've seen, I've lived outside of Fort Collins for 9 months of my life, but I've seen so many of my friends go out, to college, Tennessee, Alabama, Boston, California. And then they somehow find their way, making their way back here. And I'll just take it on their word about how special of a place, Northern Colorado is in general. And so for me, at least for the next 18 years, or well, I should say 17 now, because Boone's a year and a half. Our roots are here, and we're gonna, enjoy kind of this area while they're growing up, the safety, schools, all that good stuff, and from there we'll kind of determine. But yeah, you kind of like you said, you got the golden ticket. I happen to be born here, and then it happens to be a pretty great place, and to start a business, accounting, and things of that nature. And like for you, as far as on the like starting a business in a place where you kind of receive a golden ticket, like, do you give back to the community? How are you guys kind of like involved in Windsor? I saw you guys, at the Halloween trick or treat last year, and so many different ways. And it's like, man, we're going to be working at the Mission here on the 17th. We're going to go do our entire team for a couple hours and then make a donation. It's like, we're just now starting to really get into that. Like, how do we give back to our community that's given so much to us?
Yeah. So me personally, I do some pro bono work for people that need the help. And so that's kind of part of it. Our staff are able to, on paid time, go volunteer for things that they're passionate about or causes or organizations that they like to be a part of. We like to do community stuff. We like to sponsor things. We like to, give candy out to kids. We like to do those sorts of things. Those are sort of the low hanging fruit. But I would say helping people that need the help and doing that pro bono is probably the most satisfying because, as you know, I mean, taxes are a scary thing and people are afraid of the government and they're afraid of the IRS and what the ramifications of doing something wrong might be. And so just being able to help people in that way seems to be the most benefit that we can provide the community.
And I see that through so many different, entrepreneurial journeys or individuals who are living here. It's like, how can they give back? And, Pat Stryker is like, I would say like she's leading by example in the sense of how much she gives back to the community. And there's so many different examples like that, those they're unsung. So that's so awesome that you're doing that and able to help and provide your expertise to a community that, there's so many of us that are, we have amazing benefits in our life and have been, and hopefully not taking those for granted. But some of us absolutely need the help. And that's great that you're able to do that. As far as, and Windsor's kind of your home base, is that's kind of like where you guys are out of, but you guys, the radius is as far as wherever you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in Windsor. Obviously, we have clients from all of the northern Colorado towns. I have clients from Colorado Springs. I have clients in Texas, California, Oregon, New York. So, the digital age has made things pretty easy as far as communicating, doing things securely, Zoom, voice, that sort of thing are all helpful. So I would say our bread and butter is definitely northern Colorado, but we do serve people all over.
Awesome. No, I mean, it's been fun to watch you. I think your marketing is phenomenal. I think you provide a ton of value. I would say like that's like the one thing that like I would say like for my team, like everything that we do is like, where is it value? How can we add value? And, following all the information. So if you guys are looking for like just a plethora of good information, follow Zach on some of his socials because he just is a wealth of knowledge and he shares it freely that is extremely beneficial. Is there any, if there was to be a tip for, let's just, whether it's an individual, or a couple, a partnership, whatever, what would be the one tax tip that you would give somebody if you were to sit down and it's the first time that you've ever talked with them and they're looking for, how can we do better on taxes?
Well, I'm gonna answer a question with a question. I know you know this stat. So how often do people move from their primary residences?
Got to be like around 5 to 7 years.
Perfect. That was what I thought it was too. So tracking your basis in your property is a really low-hanging fruit idea here. So everyone gets an exclusion for their primary residence if they've lived there 2 out of the last 5 years. So if you live in a primary residence, it's your home 2 out of 5 years, you're able to exclude capital gains. This is one of the biggest tax breaks that I'm aware of in the tax code, right? So to do that, you have to be able to accurately identify what your cost basis is in that property in order to figure out what your gain is and whether you can exclude all of it or just some of it. So having receipts and keeping track of the money that you're doing to improve your property is important. So if you're putting in fences, if you're doing landscaping, if you're finishing your basement, if you're repairing a water heater, none of that stuff is deductible today, but it is going to factor into your cost basis and it could save you money in the future, especially if you are leveling up, which a lot of people do, meaning that they buy a home, they get started in the home, they live there for a couple of years, they save up a down payment, they buy a new primary residence and convert their old one into a rental. I see this all the time. So having a really solid cost basis is a good idea. It's going to help you in a lot of different ways. So just keep good records.
Wow. I'm making a note of that because we've done I did not know that. I really didn't. I knew that obviously like you had a basis, I think it's like $250 for an individual, $500 for a married couple or something along those lines. And I knew it was based off of your cost basis, not knowing your cost basis could adjust based off of the upgrades, renovations, and things you've done. I finished my basement, $65,000, did a kitchen renovation, $125,000, and just did a concrete pad, $10,000. And you take, let's just call it 25% on that number, $200,000, that's $50,000 of saved income right right there. Literally, I mean, truly, I mean, like that's not a fictitious number. And in 18 years or 17 years, you know, who knows what $50,000 is worth in 20 years, but regardless, that's massive amount of value right there. And I didn't know that. So I'm going to call my contractors and say, hey, send me an invoice. I just need to put it in my files. Send me an invoice. I just need an updated file. And that's $50,000 of savings right there. So all I can say is thank you for saying that.
Sure.
Well, we finished each of our podcasts. Now you got your roots in Estes Park, but you got your shingle hung in Windsor with UNC out your back door for your undergrad and then CSU for your master's. So you kind of know the area better than most as far as all of Northern Colorado. If there was, whether it's a patio or a brewery that you're going to go inside and, you know, enjoy a beer at their tap room, where are you going to go spend a Friday afternoon after you got off a long day's work doing 50 tax returns?
Yeah, so our jam right now is called Peculiar, which is in the old Windsor Mill. It's a very cool building that was renovated a couple of years ago. Very historic building in Windsor. They began doing a historical renovation. Unfortunately, it was burned down by arson. They never caught the people. And so they had to kind of pivot and adjust. They created this beautiful building. They salvaged as much of the materials and kind of mystique as they could from the old building. And they have a beautiful patio. They have a slab for food trucks, and their beer is really good. All the staff are very warm and inviting. So our jam has been to go to Peculiar. Like most breweries now, they're kid friendly. There are things for them to do. So that's been our spot.
That's a first. So if you're in Windsor and you're on the, what would you call that? Probably more the east side of Windsor.
Yep.
Check out Peculiar.
Yeah.
Zach, I appreciate you joining us. And if you guys are, you know, whether it's from all of any part of Colorado, moving here, consider moving here, he is an expert. We'll provide some contact information down in the show notes. And I would say get started early, as I think that's one of the things I've done pretty decent on my life of getting my taxes done early. I just don't like having it hang over my head, but get it done early, reach out to him, get on a schedule. He will treat you amazing. And I appreciate you joining us on Fort Collins Fella today, because Chris, he was a little bit busy, but I appreciate you joining on our podcast. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.